That morning in the courtroom, I walked in with slightly trembling hands but an oddly steady heart. Every eye followed me, an old gray-haired woman dragged to court by her own daughter and son-in-law. I sat down, drew a deep breath, and when I lifted my head, Judge Ryan Mitchell's eyes met mine. He froze, his eyes widening, his voice breaking as he blurted out, "No way, it's you." The entire courtroom fell into silence. I clearly heard the sound of papers slipping from Daniel's hand and hitting the floor. His face turned pale, his lips pressed tight. Olivia, my only daughter, trembled, glanced quickly, then lowered her head, unable to look straight at me. I stayed quiet, sat upright, hands folded together, and offered a calm smile. That smile wasn't meant to provoke, but to remind myself that I had already survived the darkest days, and now it was time for the truth to speak. I knew the people around me were whispering, wondering why this stern judge was shaken at the sight of me. What about a mother who seemed so weak, betrayed by her own flesh and blood, could possibly turn the entire trial upside down? The story that follows will show you. I went from being pushed out on the street to holding the scales of power, and the ending, believe me, will leave you deeply satisfied. My name is Martha Reynolds, and I have just turned 69. My life has always been simple, each day passing quietly in a small house on the outskirts of Fairview. Every morning, I wake up before the sun rises, brew a pot of strong coffee, and pour it into the old ceramic mug I've used for over 20 years. I sit by the window, sipping slowly while watching the little garden outside, filled with roses and lavender that I planted and cared for like my own children. There's also a pot of geraniums my late husband loved. It feels like a piece of him still lingers there. I keep every memento of him safe. The wool sweater he wore during cold winters, the faded family photos, and even the half-finished diary he left behind. Looking at them brings warmth, but also a tight ache in my chest. I gave my entire youth to raising my only daughter, Olivia. When my husband passed away, I was just past 30, suddenly shouldering the roles of both mother and father. I worked night shifts at a garment factory, cleaned offices during the day, and sold baked goods at the weekend market for extra money. I never bought myself new clothes, but I always saved enough for Olivia to have books, fresh notebooks, and new shoes for every school year. I remember cold winter nights when I came home exhausted, and Olivia would still be awake, running to hug me tightly and whisper, "Mom, I'll study hard so I can take care of you one day." That innocent promise gave me strength to endure the hardest times. We shared so many beautiful memories. I recall when Olivia turned 10, I took her to an outdoor movie in the town park. We sat on an old blanket, ate popcorn, and laughed out loud at the funny scenes. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said I was her hero. Moments like that made every sacrifice worthwhile. The day Olivia graduated college, I cried like a child, proud and relieved, believing that all my struggles had finally been rewarded. But after Olivia married, things began to change. At first, I thought it was natural. She had her own family, she'd be busy. Yet I realized the distance between us grew wider. Phone calls became fewer, weekend meals turned into obligations, sometimes avoided altogether. In Olivia's eyes, I no longer saw the warmth of before, only cold detachment. Daniel, her husband, never hid his disdain for me. From the start, he acted superior, as though he had the right to control everything. Whenever he came to my house, he would plop down into the wooden chair that had belonged to my husband, blasting the television as if it were his territory. He spoke to me in a joking tone, but every word stung. "You living alone in such a big house is such a waste. You should let us take care of it instead." Olivia stayed silent, sometimes even nodding in agreement. I wanted to believe she was only influenced by him, that deep down she still loved me. But each cold glance, each careless word from her cut deeper into my heart. I slowly realized that from a devoted mother, I had become an unwanted guest in my own family. Their visits weren't out of care but out of calculation, measuring, plotting. The house where I had poured my entire life raising Olivia had now become Daniel's target. And Olivia, the daughter who once called me her hero, turned away, silently siding with her husband. I still kept my morning routines, watering flowers, drinking coffee, but my heart grew heavy, knowing that the peace of this home was being threatened piece by piece. I tell you all this so you understand. I was not born strong. I was just a mother, living quietly with the memories of my husband and the love for my child. But betrayal from my own blood and the blatant contempt of my son-in-law pushed me to the edge. And from there, I had no choice but to change, so I would no longer be the shadow cast aside, but the woman who stood up to protect the last dignity of her life. That evening, I prepared everything more carefully than ever before. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of roasted chicken, the dining table was covered with the hand-embroidered cloth I had made in my youth, and a vase of lavender sat in the middle, releasing its soft fragrance. I wanted a warm dinner with my daughter, hoping to bridge the distance that had grown between us. I remembered how much Olivia used to love creamy pumpkin soup, so I cooked it with the same care as when she was little. Deep inside, I still believed that if we sat together, the memories of our close bond would return. The door opened. Olivia entered with Daniel. My daughter wore a pale blue dress, her face cold, eyes avoiding mine. Daniel didn't bother to greet me. He walked straight to the large wooden chair at the head of the table, the one that had belonged to my husband. I froze for a moment. I had always left that chair empty as a way to honor him. Yet Daniel sat down, leaning back, as if it had always been his. I wanted to protest, but my throat tightened, and I only managed to invite them to the table. When the food was served, Daniel didn't even lift his chopsticks. Instead, he opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers, placing them right in front of me. "Martha, we've discussed this thoroughly. These are the admission forms for Sunrise Nursing Home." His voice was smooth, detached, as if he were talking about business. I froze, the chopsticks slipping from my hand. Olivia, sitting across from me, nodded calmly, showing no emotion. I stared at her, tears welling up, searching for the child who once cried in my arms after falling off her bike, the one who once promised to take care of me. But before me was only a stranger. Why a nursing home? I've lived here for so many years. This is my home, the place filled with your father's memories. Can't you understand? My hand gripped the edge of the table, my voice trembling. Olivia's reply was icy. "You can't stay in this big old house by yourself. It's too large, too outdated, unsafe. Daniel and I need a better place to prepare for the future. The decision is final." I felt my heart tear apart. I looked around the room, at the family photos on the walls, at the chipped paint my husband once repaired with his own hands. This was where I gave birth to Olivia, where I raised her, where we laughed and cried together. Yet now my daughter saw it as nothing more than an asset to be cleared away. "Olivia, this is my home. It's where you grew up, where your father passed away. Are you really going to take it all from me?" I pleaded, tears streaming down my face. Daniel leaned in, his voice sickly sweet. "Mrs. Martha, you should think about your health. At the nursing home, you'll have friends your age, doctors to care for you. Here, you're just lonely. We'll handle everything. You just need to sign." He slid the pen toward me. My hands shook as I picked up the papers, the words blurring through my tears. I knew that once I signed, I would lose everything. I lifted my eyes toward my daughter one last time, hoping to see hesitation, some trace of compassion. But Olivia only crossed her arms and said firmly, "Mom, don't drag this out. It's already settled." At that moment, all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights for her, turned to ashes. I had believed that a mother's bond with her child was unbreakable. Yet here it was severed by her own hand without a flicker of doubt. The whole house felt frozen. The meal I had poured my heart into sat untouched, and even the lavender flowers seemed to wither before my eyes. I pushed the papers away, my voice breaking yet resolute. "I need time. I can't sign this." Daniel frowned. Olivia shot up from her chair. "There's nothing left to discuss. The decision has been made." With that, they turned and left, leaving me alone in the house full of memories, my heart shattered. That night, I sat in the living room under the dim yellow light, staring at old photographs. Olivia's childhood smile, our family together at Christmas, all of it now mocking the cruel present. I felt both pain and fury, asking myself where I had gone wrong for my own daughter to be so cold. And that was the beginning of the storm. The moment I knew my life would never be the same again. I still remember that gloomy morning, when the first winter winds whistled through the cracks in the door, carrying a biting chill. I was sitting in the kitchen, quietly sipping my usual cup of coffee, when I heard urgent knocks at the door. I opened it. and standing before me was Daniel with a sharply dressed man holding a stack of files, followed by a young woman clutching a notebook. Daniel smiled politely, but his eyes were full of calculation. "This is Mr. Carter, a real estate agent, and Miss Lisa, the attorney," he introduced them as if I had no authority in my own home. I froze, still processing, when they simply walked in, moving through the rooms as though the property already belonged to them. I followed silently, my chest tightening as I overheard their conversations. Agent Carter glanced at the ceiling and declared, "The electrical system is outdated, needs a full replacement. The bathroom is worn out, buyers will definitely bargain." Daniel nodded approvingly. "Yes, but if we fix it up, we can raise the price. The land here is worth more than this old house anyway." They chatted animatedly, as if I were invisible. I was right there, yet no one looked at me, no one asked me a thing. I was nothing more than a shadow in the very home I had built with my life. That afternoon, Olivia brought me a stack of glossy brochures featuring smiling seniors in flower-filled gardens. She sat beside me, her tone forcedly sweet. "Mom, I've done my research. Sunrise Nursing Home has private rooms, nurses on call around the clock. They even have yoga classes and a library. I think you'd be happier there than living alone." My heart tightened. She spoke as though she cared, but her eyes betrayed impatience and detachment. I set the brochure on the table and asked softly, "Olivia, have you ever thought that I never asked for this? Do you remember promising to care for me for the rest of my life?" She stayed silent, avoiding my gaze, then replied flatly, "You have to think about the future. Daniel and I need more space. You'll be better off there. It's best for everyone." In the days that followed, Daniel began fabricating stories. One evening, he told Olivia right in front of me, "You know, your mom almost left the gas on yesterday. I walked in and smelled it." I gasped, quickly protesting, "That's a lie. I always double-check before bed." But Olivia only frowned, half doubting, half believing. I saw the trust in her eyes fade, replaced with suspicion Daniel had planted. He wanted to paint me as senile, laying the groundwork to declare me legally incompetent. I felt like a fish caught in a net, struggling, yet no one believed me. One afternoon, while I was sorting the closet, Olivia walked in, carrying a small wooden box. It was the box of keepsakes I had always treasured: my wedding ring, the earrings my husband gave me for our 20th anniversary, and a few precious family photos. Olivia opened it, her eyes flickering with emotion for a moment before hardening again. "Mom, these things won't be safe in a nursing home. I'll put them in a bank vault for you." I snatched the box back, my voice shaking. "Those are my memories, your father's memories. You have no right." But Olivia pulled hard, and the wedding ring tumbled to the floor. I bent down to pick it up, my hands trembling so badly I couldn't hold it. Daniel walked in, scooped up the ring, and smirked. "Better let us take care of these. You're not clear-headed enough anymore." I sank into a chair, feeling as though each keepsake they stole was another blade slicing through the ties of family memory. The house felt emptier by the day, not from lack of furniture, but from the absence of love, respect, and filial piety. I stared at the young couple scheming in front of me, my chest tightening with both grief and rage. I had given my life for my daughter, only to be treated as a burden, an obstacle to their ambitions. That night, I sat alone in the dark living room. Their laughter and voices drifted from the next room, stabbing into my heart like needles. I pressed the wedding ring into my palm, whispering to my husband's photo. "They want to take everything, the house, our memories. But I can't let that happen. I can't just disappear like this." Deep inside, a small flame began to burn, fragile, yet unyielding. I didn't yet know what I could do, but I understood one thing. If I stayed silent, I would lose it all. And in that moment, I realized the fragile piece I had clung to was truly over. I had just endured one of the longest, most painful nights of my life. After Olivia and Daniel left, taking the box of keepsakes and leaving only their cold stares behind, I sat motionless in the living room. No lights were on, only the faint glow from the porch spilled through. Hugging an old pillow, I cried until no tears were left. Everything seemed to collapse around me. My trust in my daughter, the meaning of the home I had guarded all my life. My sleeves were soaked, and I whispered to myself, "Maybe they're right. I'm old, useless. Maybe it's time to just disappear." The thought of giving up frightened me, but it haunted me all the same. That night, I stayed awake until dawn. When the pale morning light touched the window, I felt completely drained in both body and spirit. I wandered the house like a shadow, touching each object, each photo, as if saying goodbye forever. While sorting through my husband's desk, a place I rarely opened, I stumbled upon a drawer that had been locked for years. The key was nowhere to be found, but something inside urged me to search through his old notebooks. Finally, tucked inside a yellowed journal, I discovered a small rusty key. My hands trembled as I slid it into the lock. The drawer creaked open to reveal a dark wooden box, covered in dust. I placed it on the table, my heart pounding. When I lifted the lid, the morning light glinted off neatly arranged documents inside. I froze, hardly believing my eyes. It was my husband's signed will, along with certificates of property ownership. I turned page after page, tears streaming again, but this time they came from hope, not despair. The will clearly stated all properties, company shares, and even a downtown apartment, the very one Olivia and Daniel were living in, belonged to me. Olivia would only inherit a small portion, and only if she cared for me with love and respect. I gasped, my hands trembling but my eyes shining. All these years, I thought we lived solely off a meager pension, but my husband had quietly prepared everything. He had foreseen something, feared for me, and built a final shield. There was more, a folder of stock certificates for Dalton Industries, Daniel's company. The shareholding was enough to give me a real voice in major decisions. I collapsed into a chair, stunned by the sudden power in my hands. Not only this house, but Olivia and Daniel's entire lives, their home, their finances, even his career, were within my reach. At the bottom of the box lay a small envelope, marked with my husband's familiar handwriting, "To Martha." My hands shook as I tore the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, each word flowing like his voice. "My dearest Martha, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer by your side. I'm sorry for keeping this from you, but I wanted this to be both a surprise and a final protection. I've spent years quietly investing, buying property, collecting shares. I did it all for one reason, so you would never bow your head, never be disrespected. I was always uneasy about Daniel, his greedy eyes, his arrogant tone. If I guessed right, this day has come. What I leave you is not just money, but power. Use it wisely. Not for bitter revenge, but to protect yourself, to show them that love cannot be exploited and sacrifice is not meant to be trampled on. I've always believed you are strong enough to do this. Remember, you are never alone. I am still here, in this house, in these keepsakes, and in your heart." I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest, tears streaming. But this time I didn't feel weak or abandoned. I felt as if my husband were right there, his warm hand on my shoulder, giving me strength. That moment was the turning point. I was no longer the mother pushed aside, discarded from her home. I was now the one holding the scales, the one with the power to decide. From victim, I became the wielder of control. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a surge of energy. I stood and looked around the house. The worn walls, the scratched furniture, all of it seemed different. This was no longer a place at risk of being stolen. It was now a fortress I would defend with all my strength. I whispered, "Thank you, my love. I won't let anyone take what we built. I'll make them understand the value of family, of love, of respect." Last night I had considered surrender, but this morning I knew I would fight. And now I had the weapon to do so. The midpoint, the shift from darkness to light, had transformed me completely. From this moment on, I would no longer tremble before Daniel and Olivia. I would show them that the mother they dismissed was, in fact, the one holding their entire fate. I sat by the window for hours, clutching the letter my husband had left me. His shaky handwriting was like a flame piercing through my darkness. I was no longer the weak woman who would let her daughter and son-in-law trample on me. Now, I held the key. But to turn that key into a weapon, I needed a plan. Sharp, meticulous, leaving no cracks. The next morning, I went to the office of Victoria Hayes, a well-known attorney specializing in property disputes. I had known of her through my husband, and most importantly, she was discreet and trustworthy. When I laid out the stack of documents, the will, property deeds, and Dalton Industries stock, Victoria's eyes widened before she sat up straighter. "Martha, you're sitting on a fortune. But all that power means nothing unless we have proof they abused and slandered you. We need recordings, messages, anything that exposes their scheme. I nodded. I knew Daniel could never hide forever. He was too arrogant, too certain of his manipulation. And so we began. Victoria handed me a tiny recorder that could be tucked under the living room table. I fixed it right beneath Daniel's usual seat. It didn't take long before it bore fruit. One evening, Daniel leaned back, voice laced with irritation. "Olivia, you need to hurry. If your mother doesn't sign, I'll have the lawyer file for incapacity. Don't forget, the debt at the casino isn't going to wait." My chest ached, but burned with fury. I handed the recording straight to Victoria. "Perfect," she said. "This is the first brick to bring down his wall of lies." Then another chance came from Olivia herself. One afternoon, she left her phone on the table while stepping into the kitchen. The screen lit up with a message. "Make sure your mother believes she can't live alone. I need the house before month's end." It was from Daniel. My heart clenched as I quickly snapped a picture with my phone, hands shaking but determined. Evidence number 2 was mine. Victoria went further. She hired a private investigator to follow Daniel. The results came faster than I imagined. Within 2 weeks, we had a full dossier. Photos of Daniel walking into an underground casino on the outskirts, carrying wads of cash. Some nights, he lost everything, his face twisted with rage. Worse, he was spotted with a young woman, laughing, kissing, holding her close outside a bar. The file also included debt receipts, totaling tens of thousands of dollars. My stomach churned. This man, drowning in debt and infidelity, had the audacity to tell me I was unfit to make decisions. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. I could almost feel my husband's invisible hand guiding me. I began consolidating my power. With Victoria's help, I updated every property deed, from my own home to the apartment Olivia and Daniel thought was theirs. I contacted the bank, confirmed every account, redirected all flows of money to me. I registered my voting rights at Dalton Industries, Daniel's workplace. When the banker handed me the confirmation of a massive balance, it felt like drawing a gleaming sword from its sheath. Yet outwardly, I remained the same calm Martha. I still wore my old sweaters, brewed tea every morning, watered my roses. Neighbors passing by would smile. "Martha, you're so resilient. You look so peaceful." They didn't know the storm brewing behind my eyes. I no longer carried the gaze of a fearful mother, but that of someone who knew she held the reins of fate. Daniel still came by, still loud and cocky. One afternoon he sneered, "Martha, you're moving out next week. I already booked the movers." Sitting in the kitchen, I sipped my tea, then locked eyes with him. "Oh, really? Then you'd better start looking for a new place too." He flinched, frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I only smiled, offering no answer. Watching his flicker of unease, I felt a calm satisfaction. At night, instead of crying, I stayed up writing. Spreading out blank pages, I listed each step of the plan. On one side, what I had, the will, the assets, proof of infidelity, gambling debts, the recorded threats, the coercive texts. On the other, their weaknesses. I underlined each item, like a general marking targets on a battlefield. I remembered my husband's words, "Use power to protect and to teach." That would be my compass. I thought often about Olivia. My daughter had been manipulated by Daniel, but that didn't erase the betrayal. I wasn't sure if I could forgive, but I knew she had to face the truth. She needed to see her husband for what he truly was. Only then would the lesson hold weight. Day by day, I played the role of the quiet old mother, but in my mind, every move was being arranged. I was no longer a victim cornered. I was the one moving the pieces. And soon, Olivia and Daniel would realize they weren't trapping me. They were walking straight into the snare my husband and I had prepared long ago. As I watered the roses, my hands were gentle, but my eyes were different. Each drop glittered in the sun, a reflection of the calm outside masking the storm within. I knew the moment to unmask them was drawing near. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. This wasn't just a revenge plan. It was the path to reclaim dignity, to remind Olivia that a mother's love could never be turned into a pawn for greed. And Daniel, he would pay the price for it all. That morning, the sky hung heavy with strange gray clouds. I rose early, brewed myself a hot cup of tea, and settled into the chair by the window, quietly waiting. Today was the day Daniel said the movers would come to help me leave my own house. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Instead, there was a strange calm within me. I knew the game was about to turn. Around 9 o'clock, a truck pulled up outside. I peeked through the curtain, watching Daniel swagger out, arrogance dripping from his every step. Olivia trailed behind, looking restless, though she tried to keep her cold mask on. 3 men in moving company uniforms followed, laughing casually, clearly thinking this was just another routine job. Daniel barged right in, voice booming. "Martha, the time has come. We'll help you pack up. Quick and painless, no worries." He waved at the men to start hauling furniture. One headed straight for the wooden cabinet where I kept my family photos. I set my cup of tea down, rose slowly. "Wait," I said, my voice steady but commanding. Everyone froze, turning toward me. Daniel smirked. "What now? You don't get a say here." I walked to the table, pulled out the thick folder I had prepared, and slapped it down hard. "You're wrong, Daniel. The one with no power here is you." I opened it, pulled out the deed to the house, held it up high. "This house, and the apartment you live in, are in my name, not Olivia's, and certainly not yours." Olivia's eyes went wide, her face pale. "No, that can't be. Mom, what are you saying?" she stammered. I looked straight at her, voice soft but heavy with truth. "You forgot something, Olivia. Your father never made a move without thinking ahead. He left everything to me. And only if you treated me with love and respect would you have inherited a share. Do you think you've done that?" Daniel's face flushed red as he snatched the folder, flipping through the pages. When he saw the official seals and signatures, he roared, "Forgery! This is fake!" I folded my arms, calm as ever. "You're welcome to verify. My lawyer, Victoria Hayes, holds the originals and all supporting documents. If you want court, I'm ready." The movers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them asked cautiously, "Ma'am, should we keep going?" I turned to them with a gentle smile. "No, this is my home. Nothing leaves. You can return to your office and tell them the owner refused." They nodded quickly and left, the tension thick as they slipped out. Olivia collapsed into a chair, hands trembling. "Mom, why didn't you ever say anything? Why keep this from me?" My heart ached, but my voice was firm. "I didn't hide it, Olivia. I only just found out myself. Your father planned it all because he never trusted Daniel. And now, you see, he was right." Daniel lunged forward, shouting in my face, "You think some papers make you stronger than me? I'll prove you're insane. I'll sue. I cut him off, voice sharp, unshaken. "You forget something. I recorded every threat you made, every message you sent Olivia, all your gambling debts, your nights with other women. Who do you think the court will believe? A man drowning in filth, or a mother who spent her life raising her child?" Daniel froze, words choking in his throat. Olivia turned to him, eyes wide with terror. "Daniel, you did all this? The debts, the cheating, you lied to me too?" Daniel turned away, unable to meet her gaze. I looked at them both, my voice softer now but unwavering. "You wanted to throw me out, but you never realized. I'm the one who holds the ground beneath your feet. I nearly gave up, but your father made sure I'd have strength. And now I'll use it to defend my dignity." The room sank into silence. Olivia broke down in tears, while Daniel clenched his fists, shaking with impotent rage. I returned to my chair, sipped my tea, my eyes glowing with a calm they had never seen before. In that moment, I knew the tide had turned. I was no longer the lamb cornered by wolves. I was the lioness, standing tall. That was the moment the real climax began. And what would follow next would not only vindicate me, but force Olivia to awaken and make Daniel pay for every sin he had sown. The trial date came faster than I imagined. Daniel refused to stop. He hired a flashy young lawyer who strutted around with booming speeches and sky-high fees. They filed a countersuit, accusing me of senile dementia, unstable mind, and shamelessly demanding full custody of the baby Olivia was carrying. When I heard it, I only sighed. He thought he could turn black into white, but this time he would learn the meaning of justice. The courtroom was packed. Olivia sat beside me, eyes swollen from crying. She had begun to see the truth, but regret still weighed heavy. Daniel entered with arrogant swagger, adjusting his tie, clutching his briefcase as if victory already belonged to him. His lawyer spoke first, pacing dramatically. "The defendant, Mrs. Martha Collins, is elderly, unstable, forgets to turn off the stove, forgets to lock doors. Her behavior endangers herself and the unborn child. Mr. Daniel Foster only wishes to protect his family. His voice rang out like a rehearsed performance. I sat quietly, hands resting on the thick folder Victoria and I had prepared. When it was her turn, Victoria rose, voice calm and solid. "Your Honor, this is fabrication. We have clear evidence of Mr. Foster's true character." She laid out the recordings. Daniel shouting, threatening Olivia, calling me a burden, even vowing to throw me into an asylum. The gallery buzzed. Daniel's composure cracked. But it didn't end there. Victoria presented the text messages. "Make your mother believe she can't live alone. I need the house before the end of the month." Then came photos from the private investigator. Daniel walking into an underground casino. Daniel wrapped around another woman. Attached were debt statements climbing into tens of thousands of dollars. I stared at him, watching sweat bead across his forehead. The tension was thick. Daniel's lawyer scrambled. All lies, fabricated evidence. But before he could continue, the judge spoke. He removed his glasses, studying me for a long moment. "Excuse me, Mrs. Collins? Martha Collins?" His voice trembled slightly. I blinked, then nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The room fell silent. The judge smiled softly, eyes warm. "I am Ryan Mitchell. 30 years ago, I was just an awkward intern at family court. You helped me then, showed me how to organize files, even brought me coffee late at night. You once told me I'd make a fine judge, even when I doubted myself. I never forgot." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I whispered, "Ryan, now I remember." Daniel and his lawyer turned pale. They had not expected this twist. Judge Mitchell's straightened voice stern again. "After reviewing the evidence, the court finds that Mr. Daniel Foster not only fabricated lies against his mother-in-law, but also threatened, manipulated, and is drowning in debt. He has no grounds to seek custody. Meanwhile, Mrs. Martha Collins has shown clarity, strength, and a lifetime of dedication. All claims against her are dismissed." Daniel shot to his feet. "No, this is bias. This is unfair." But his voice cracked with desperation. The gavel slammed. "Order. The court rules. Mr. Daniel Foster is prohibited from contacting Mrs. Martha Collins or Mrs. Olivia Foster. He will pay all legal fees and compensate emotional damages. Furthermore, Dalton Industries will be notified of his debts and misconduct." Olivia sobbed into her hands. I squeezed her trembling fingers, whispering, "You see, the truth always shines through." Daniel glared at me with burning hatred as security led him away, a defeated, disgraced figure. I sat still, tears flowing but heart finally light. Justice had been served. I had protected my home, my dignity, and the future of my grandchild. Before so many witnesses, I was no longer the frail old woman, but the mother who dared to rise against betrayal and greed. And this victory wasn't just mine, it belonged to every soul who had ever been dismissed, overlooked, or betrayed. When the trial ended, I stepped outside and inhaled deeply. The sky was clear, sunlight spilling like a blessing. Olivia gripped my hand, her voice trembling. "Mom, I'm sorry. Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled, pulling her into an embrace. In that moment, I knew victory wasn't only about defeating evil. It was about reclaiming love I thought I had lost. That was justice. That was the sweetest revenge I had ever tasted. After the trial, everything shifted quickly. Daniel lost it all. Dalton Industries immediately suspended his contract after receiving the court's notice. Creditors swarmed in, demanding every cent he had squandered at the casinos. With no assets, no allies, and no ground to stand on, he slipped out of town quietly, head down, avoiding the contemptuous stares of neighbors. People whispered, "That's the price of greed." The apartment he and Olivia once lived in reverted back to me. I didn't have to force him out. He vanished on his own, carrying the kind of disgrace that could never be washed away. A man who once strutted with arrogance, thinking he controlled everything, was now reduced to nothing more than a broken loser, abandoned and alone. Olivia was different. She stayed, carrying within her a fragile new life. In the days that followed, she cried often, her eyes constantly swollen and red. One evening, while I sat at the kitchen table, Olivia came to me. She sank to her knees, clutching my hands. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was blind. I let Daniel deceive me, turn me into someone who betrayed you. Please, give me a chance." I looked down at her, a storm rising inside me. I loved my daughter, but what she had done left scars too deep to vanish overnight. My voice, steadier than it had ever been, answered, "I can't forgive you yet, but I don't want to cut you off either. You still have a long road to prove you've changed. If you truly regret it, then live with honesty. Love your child with the same love I once gave you." Olivia broke into sobs, burying her face into my hands. I didn't hold her tightly, but I didn't push her away either. In that fragile moment, anyone watching would have felt both satisfaction and sorrow. Satisfaction that the villain had been brought low, and sorrow that even through betrayal the bond of mother and daughter still flickered faintly. I knew the path to healing would be long, but at least I had cracked open a door, not for Daniel, he was beyond redemption, but for Olivia, for the grandchild yet to be born, and for my own heart, to lighten its burden in the years I still had left. In the end, as I look back on everything, I've come to realize one truth. Kindness does not mean letting others trample over you. I spent my whole life loving, sacrificing for my daughter, but Olivia's blind devotion to Daniel and his endless greed nearly destroyed everything I had built. It was only when I stood up, faced them, and used the truth to protect myself that I held on to my dignity. And in that moment, I understood. Age is not a barrier. Weakness is not who we are, but only the shell of a strength waiting to be awakened. Yet this story is not just about satisfaction. It leaves behind a question that lingers in my heart, and perhaps in yours as well. If you were me, if you were Martha, would you forgive your daughter? Or would you let her bear the full weight of the pain she caused? Betrayal by one's own blood is the hardest wound to heal, and the answer may never be the same for each of us. Now I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you choose forgiveness, or would you choose justice? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next powerful revenge story where justice is served and the truth always finds its way to the light. This is the place where together we'll experience the full spectrum of emotions, from anger, heartbreak, and shock to relief and the sweet satisfaction of watching the guilty finally bow their heads to pay the price.